Hello and welcome. It's a breath of fresh air for 29 students of the College of Forestry and Mechanization in Kaduna as they regain their freedom after 57 days in the bandits' captivity. Former President Olusegun Obasanjo advocates carrot and stick approach in fighting insecurity, says division of the country is not an option. Imo State government moves to check criminal activities and attacks on various targets, procures new equipment to beef up security. And Israel's political crisis persists as the country's president chooses Prime Minister Netanyahu's rival to form a new government within 28 days. Plus, we'll have business, sports, news from Abuja, and news from our studios in London.
On business news tonight, Federal Inland Revenue Service plans deduction of taxes from bank accounts of defaulters after expiration of 30-day public notice.
On sports news tonight, the Premier League confirms a limited number of supporters will be permitted to return to stadiums for the final 2 rounds of matches this season.
And from Abuja, the Nigerian Communications Commission and Nigerian Communications Satellite strike deal to facilitate the deployment of 5G technology in the nation's telecommunications sector.
It's a happy homecoming for the 29 abducted students of the Federal College of Forestry and Mechanization, AFACA, in Kaduna State, as they regain their freedom from their captors today after spending 57 days in custody. The students were received by the Kaduna State government officials this evening after they were released around Kidanda community in Giwa local government area of the state. Parents of the students and the nation at large have been traumatized since the abduction of 39 students about 2 months ago. 10 of them were later released a few weeks ago, while the kidnappers demanded a huge ransom from their parents. Immediately the news of their rescue broke, Channels Television contacted the chairman of the Parents Committee, Mr. Abdullahi Usman, to confirm if a ransom was paid by the parents, but he declined to speak further. Also, the Kaduna State Commissioner for Internal Security and Home Affairs, Samuel Arwan, did not give details on whether or not a ransom was paid to secure their release.
We can confirm to you that the remaining students of Federal College of Forestry Mechanization are here with us. Like you know, they need to undergo a thorough medical examination. But by the special grace of God, we will meet you tomorrow, Thursday, for a detailed briefing.
The parents of the students are the most elated, as one of them describes the news of their freedom as a great moment of joy for them, even though they are yet to be reunited with them.
A great moment in our lives that at least we can see our children again. Though I'm unable to go inside now and see them, but at least I believe that they are around, and from what we've been hearing from them, that they are healthy, and I pray it should be so. So seeing them in Kaduna, we are more happier, we are more relaxed than when they were together with the bandit there in the bush, with the rifle pointed to them on daily basis. In fact, it is a great moment in our life. And I think every parent that knows, in fact, before I get to this place this evening, a lot of them have called me, and I just broke the news to them. They were so excited. Some of them were saying, where? I now told them, it is not possible for us to see them today. And we have to relax. Everybody should start celebrating because it's a moment of joy.
And the military is also recording some successes in the fight against banditry as they were able to rescue 13 people kidnapped by bandits from Gwagwalada district in Chikun local government area of Kaduna State today. Unfortunately, 2 community volunteers were killed by the bandits, who also burnt a local church and looted some houses in the area during the operation. The victims went to work on a farm located around Bakin Kashua when they were attacked by the bandits. Finding a solution to the current security situation in the country is a collective responsibility, and the latest suggestion is coming from former President Olusegun Obasanjo, who says the country might need to adopt a carrot-and-stick approach to fight the challenges to a standstill. One of his major points is that leaders must ensure that the 2023 election births the emergence of a new federation in Nigeria. He made the comments today when he hosted members of the TIF Professionals Group, where he noted that the government must develop a means to deal with the kidnappers and bandits heavily in place of ransom payment.
And people are still reaching out, hoping that life can be saved. It's a situation where anybody thinks that paying ransom is the way out. It's foolish. It's foolish. Because when you pay ransom, you encourage. But if you are not going to pay ransom, you must also have this means deal. Deal heavily. Have the stick. I think the point you made, Prof, maybe a bit of government turning a blind eye. Because when government does not do what people expect it to do, when the situation or that government is supposed
Staying with security, the House of Representatives is asking the Nigerian army to send reinforcement to support the troops of Operation Wellstroke in Benue State. This follows a motion of urgent national importance raised by Honorable Mark Miller, who drew the attention of the House to a resurgence of killings of innocent Nigerians by suspected herdsmen in Gwer West local government area, Guma, Makudi and Agatu in Benue State. Mr. Gbila says 70 people have been killed in the last 3 weeks and questions the seeming inability of Operation Wellstroke to curb the attacks.
The House is concerned about the seeming inability of Operation Wellstroke operatives stationed in Gwe West local government area and other security agencies in the area to counter the current guerrilla tactics of these attackers. The House also resolves to request the Defense Ministry and Nigerian Army to immediately deploy more personnel and equipment, including surveillance and intelligence gathering technology, to Operation Wellstroke operatives in Benue State to enable them tackle this resurgence of attacks by suspected herdsmen and mandate the House committees and Defense and Army to ensure compliance. The House also resolves to mandate the House committees on Defense and Army to immediately conduct an investigation into the prevailing circumstances and conditions of Operation Wellstroke and other military operatives across the country with a view to identify any constraints deterring them from carrying out their mandate of protecting the lives and property of Nigerian people.
And we have a reaction now to the release of the abducted students. The President, Muhammadu Buhari, has welcomed the release of the 29 students of the Federal College of Forestry and Mechanization, AFACA, and congratulated their friends, families, and the government and people of Kaduna State following the happy end to the saga. He says, "We are happy they have been released, thanking all the actors who contributed one way or the other to this happy outcome, in particular the defense and security agencies, the officials of the Ministry of Environment and the government of Kaduna State. We thank Nigerians for their prayers." President Buhari calls for steadfastness and security awareness on the part of citizens and the law enforcement agencies, and deplores the increasing politicization of security in the country by opportunistic politicians. The president also appeals for the release of the students of the Greenfield University and all other citizens held in captivity, expressing the strong determination of his administration to ensure that Nigerians live in a country where everyone can move where they want, when they want, and without fear of kidnapping and banditry. Now, the satellite space should have been another credible option to track kidnappers and bandits terrorizing the country. But the National Space Research and Development Agency is saying that inadequate satellites and other facilities affect the tracking of criminals. The newly appointed Director General of the agency, Halilu Shaba, believes that bandits have become sophisticated in their operations because the waves received by the agency from remote areas shows that the bandits no longer use GSM mobile phones but walkie-talkies. He's calling for collaboration between the agency and security agencies in the country regarding information sharing, especially when planning to launch attacks on criminals.
The satellite is not static over where the insurgency is taking place. And that is why one satellite is not adequate. You know, what Nigeria has there are some two satellites that are doing two different things. We have a high resolution imaging satellite, and we also have a medium resolution imaging satellite. Now, the actions that would be taking place or the activities of the bandit could be when the satellite was away from Nigerian borders. So that's why we are now advocating for more satellites for Nigeria. But what we are arranging and why we want to have a meeting with the security agents is we are hoping that very soon we will try and develop a center which is National Reconnaissance Center if we are able to find the budget anywhere and then able to work with this. The National Reconnaissance Center is supposed to scope all information about activities of the bandit, and it will be shared by all the security agencies. Like in September, we are able to see the kind of wave, concentration of waves. The bandits are also growing in their attacks. For those who read Chinua Achebe, they said, Ekweke the best said, as man has learned to shoot without missing, they've learned to. So these people are also learning daily. If you look at some waves that we're seeing, you know that communications are taking place. They are not using ordinary GSM, because they've been tracking them. So they are using walkie-talkie and the rest.
Now, while the authorities continue to weigh their options, the war of words between the two main political parties in the National Assembly continued today, with the APC caucus accusing PDP lawmakers of attempting to overheat an already charged polity. Senate Majority Leader Yahya Abdullahi, who spoke on behalf of the caucus, kicked against what he calls constitutional threat by the opposition and also rejected insinuations that President Buhari is not fully in charge of the country.
That our colleagues, we are quite aware of the role an opposition plays in any democracy. However, the statement by the PDP caucus has gone too far, given the good working relationships that we had with them in the 9th National Assembly, especially the minority caucus in the Senate. In any democracy, the right to present criticisms and concerns on the state of the nation's affairs are unassailable. However, while we respect such rights, we believe that those rights come with obligations and responsibility. In all our deliberations, the entire Senate, including the minority, have discussed exhaustively in very robust, transparent, and patriotic flavor to arrive at our concrete resolutions, jointly without opposition from members of the minority caucus. We want to assure Nigerians that Mr. President is in charge of the government and is discharging his duties conscientiously and patriotically. It is a well-known fact that the federal government under the PDP refused to invest in the security infrastructure of the country, while Mr. President under the APC-led government had massively invested in this regard, more than any other past government, including the military. And we are confident that the nation will surmount its current security challenges.
In part two, after the break, we bring you the security situation report in Niger State as a new GOC takes charge of the division there. That's in a moment. Please join us again. Welcome back. If you've just joined us, you're watching the news at 10 on Channels Television, coming to you live from Lagos. A reminder of our top stories. It's a breath of fresh air for 29 students of the College of Forestry and Mechanization in Kaduna as they regain their freedom after 57 days in the bandits' captivity. Former President Olusegun Obasanjo advocates carrot and stick approach in fighting insecurity, says the vision of the country is not an option. Imo State government moves to check criminal activities and attacks on various targets, procures new equipment to beef up security. And Israel's political crisis persists as the country's president chooses Prime Minister Netanyahu's rival to form a new government within 28 days. In Imo State, the southeast, the state government is adjusting its security strategy following the recent attack on the Federal Correctional Facility and the state police headquarters. Governor Hope Uzodinma is giving residents the assurance of adequate protection and safety of lives and property as he equips security agencies with communication gadgets and vehicles.
Imo State in recent times has been in the eye of the storm, especially regarding security-related issues. Backtrack to January 2021, and the mayhem unleashed on Olu town by suspected gunmen will come to mind. This is followed by an attack on the Imo State Correctional Center, attacks on numerous police formations in the state, as well as the recent attack on the governor's country home in Omuma.
The governor's house, his gateman house.
These onslaughts have spurred the state government into action, leading to the procurement of these vehicles and communication gadgets for security agencies in the state under the aegis of Operation Search and Flush, with the state government saying the action will re-energize the security architecture of Imo State.
Today, we are trying to once more send a signal to bandits, hoodlums, and all those criminals who on their own has decided to make life unbearable in Imo State. These vehicles and the equipment being donated today by our administration are eloquent testimony to our resolve to confront and combat criminality headlong.
Governor Uzodinma also offers his condolences to families of victims who were affected in all the recent security breaches in the state.
We shall do all that we can to ameliorate the pains of families who lost their loved ones in the course of accidental engagements with security agencies.
For the security agencies, this action will help in no small measure in tackling criminality in the state.
There is no doubt that the vehicles and the security equipment handed over to us this afternoon will contribute in no small measure in fighting crime in the state.
This is the second time the governor is distributing vehicles to security agencies in the state since he assumed office in January 2020. The expectation is that the security agencies will put the vehicles and the gadgets to good use so that crime will be reduced in Imo State. Eyitope Kuteyi, Channels Television News.
Suspending the planned 2021 census might just be a better decision, and that's what the House of Representatives is asking the federal government to do until the insecurity situation in the country is addressed. This follows a motion of urgent public importance raised by Honorable Shehu Barwa. The lawmakers are concerned that many Nigerians have been displaced, and sending any staff to high-risk areas will be directly putting them in danger. The last census was conducted in 2006. The Bauchi state government has dismissed reports that there were Boko Haram attacks in some of its local government areas. The state government said the report is a misrepresentation of facts presented by the secretary to the state government, and that the real threat at the moment is the influx of internally displaced persons. The special advisor to the governor on media, Mr. Mukhtar Gidado, refuted the claims during a press conference held at the government house. From Bauchi to Niger State, where Governor Abubakar Bello says he is confident that the federal government and the security agencies will bring an end to the security challenges confronting the state. The governor made the comments when he received the new GOC of the 1 Mechanized Division of the Nigerian Army Kaduna, Major General Danjuma Ali Kefi in Minna. The governor explains that local security outfits, especially vigilantes, are overstretched and they need more support from the military. The GOC, on his part, gave the assurance that the military will do what is required to bring the situation under control.
He just took office recently, and he's going around formations under him. Of course, he will need some time to plan his operations, which will not be detailed, of course, to general public. But I think the most important thing is he appreciates the security challenge we have. And with the little brief I gave him, he has a better understanding of what is going on here in Niger State. So I am convinced that in no too distant future, we will see some good response, and that will give us a better environment to live a normal life and secured life. The situation now, as it is at this moment, calls for cooperation between the state and federal authorities. The state government will do its part, and of course the federal government will also do their own part. And I think that understanding has already been reached. So we don't have a problem. That is not an issue anymore. That has been addressed.
Staying in Niger State, at least 10,000 people have been rendered homeless in the state due to the activities of bandits. More than 40 communities in 5 local government areas are currently under siege. Our correspondent Empress Simon in this special report takes a look at the impact of years of banditry on Niger State.
Homeless, hungry, distressed. This is the predicament of rural dwellers in most parts of Niger State. More than 10,000 people have been displaced since the renewed banditry activities about 2 years ago. We visit the IDP camp located at the Kuta Central Primary School in Shiroro, where we are told 3,000 people have so far been profiled.
We are having about 2,000, but because of this Bassa attack, which about 5 people were killed, so they have to run. They have to leave the village. So they are here with us here in Kuta camp. Some are in Gwada, taking shelter at Model Primary School, Gwada. 23 communities are with me here in Kuta IDP camp.
Children are left unattended to. There are inadequate facilities at the camp. Drugs are in short supply and not enough food to feed the growing population here.
Even paracetamol, nothing there here.
From the Kuta IDP camp, we board motorcycles to visit Gurmana community, located in Shiro local government area. The road is not motorable, and traveling on motorcycle takes about an hour. Bandits have taken over their ancestral homes, and the only available shelter are these huts numbering more than 200.
It's a difficult thing. You need to be careful how you go in and come out. Now, there are quite a lot of them here. More than 1,000 persons have been displaced in this community who now live in thatched houses like this. In the past, yams are known to be kept in things like this. But today, the crisis in Niger State have now made this a place for human beings to stay.
Kana zaune a ce to ga mutane nan. In kana da ƙarfi ka gudu, in baka da ƙarfi kuma ka gani kwanan ka ya ƙare.
Ba mu da daraja yanzu awaki ma sun fi mu daraja.
Basa and Kwatai are also neighboring communities that have been taken over by the bandits.
Barayi ne suka zo za su kakkashe mu. To sai ran Lahadi. To wurin gudu kenan sai na fadi na kare kafa. Dalili kenan ciwon ga.
There are 6 major local government areas where bandits now operate in Niger State, namely Shiroro, Munya, Mariga, Mashegu, Paikaro, and Rafi. More than 40 communities in the areas have been deserted and now under the siege of bandits, with cases of abduction for ransom recorded almost daily. Many locals have also abandoned their farmlands, leading to a major humanitarian crisis for the state. The secretary to the state government, Ahmed Matani, tells us how the present administration has been coping with the challenge.
In the whole state, we have under 5,000 policemen. There is no way in terms of this human resource that you'll be able to provide the necessary protection. So what it means is that 70% of our communities are not policed.
For the state governor, the situation is more dire than many believe.
I am confirming that we have Boko Haram elements in Niger State around Kauri. They've taken over the territory. They've installed their flag.
For a state established over 45 years ago, the last 5 years of banditry activities is without doubt a setback in its quest for development.
In the urban setting, it may look bubbling, but the citizens also live in fear. They hope that the government will find a lasting solution to the problem. But for the government, boosting the capacity of security agencies here is key to fighting the banditry challenge. And that is where the federal government has a stake. From Mina, the Niger State capital, Emperor Simon, Channels Television News.
When the news at 10 returns, women in Uyo, Akwa Ibom State demand justice for Iniubong Umoren. We also have an update on the deployment of 5G technology in the telecommunications sector. Plus, Federal Inland Revenue Service plans deduction of taxes from bank accounts of defaulters after expiration of 30-day public notice. And that will be coming on Business News. Do join us again. Welcome back to the news at 10. Some women in Uyo, the Akwa Ibom State capital, are demanding justice for Iniubong Umoren, a young woman who was killed while seeking for a job, and other women who have been victims of gender-based violence in the state. They embarked on a solidarity walk with placards and were received by the wife of the state governor, Mrs. Martha Udom Emmanuel.
4 years, 8 semesters, 64 courses, 151 credit hours, all resulting in a successful graduation from the University of Uyo in 2019 for Iniubong Umoren, who at this time was 24 years old. Her smile is full of expectations of what tomorrow promised her. But the reality of today is that Miss Umoren is no more. Her life snuffed out at the time she thought it was about to begin. Her dream was to get a job before a National Youth Service call-up. She was invited for an interview shortly after she tweeted a desire for employment. Little did she know that the meeting she set out for would turn out to be fatal. She was allegedly raped and killed by the man who posed as a job provider, an incident that has broken many hearts. Members of the State Executive Council are here on a visit to the residence she shared with her brother and sister. The mood is sorrowful, and rightly so. The head of the delegation sympathizes with those she left behind. What makes the story more touching is that Iniubong was an orphan trying to survive.
May the good Lord grant you the comfort. May the good Lord grant you peace. May the good Lord grant this family. And when was telling me that they are orphans, But where's mommy, where's daddy? That's what they're telling me. Orphans struggling to earn a living.
As siblings just want justice.
I want to plead with every government officials, please, they should do everything within their reach, what they can do to find justice for my sister.
And so does this group of angry protesters who have taken to the street. They want a stop to sexual violence. The wife of the governor delivers their message.
This will not happen again. And I want to tell you that that monster and all their accomplices will not go unpunished. He has committed rape. He has committed murder. And as such, he will be charged for rape and murder case. All others that think they can do this and go scot-free, I want to tell them that their time is up.
The sad case is far from over, as it may take more than the arrest of the perpetrator to bring closure to the family or stop the menace of sexual violence.
If there are monsters, they should go into the bush.
It will take a collective effort by the society and authorities to stamp out the act.
Very sad one there. We move over to Abuja. Here's Linda Akigbe. Linda.
Hello, Ijoma. The Nigerian Communications Commission and the Nigerian Communications Satellite have signed a memorandum of understanding to facilitate the deployment of 5G technology in the nation's telecommunications sector. Signing the documents in Abuja, the Executive Vice Chairman of the Nigerian Communications Commission, Professor Umar Dambata, says Nigeria cannot be left behind when several countries are already expanding their technologies through the 5G network. Professor Dambata explains that the synergy with NICOMSTAT would help in harnessing the contagious quantum of spectrum needed for the early deployment of 5G.
We know that ITU has designated 3.4 to 3.9 gigahertz as one of the candidates for 5G deployment all over the world. We know the bandwidth required for 5G deployment, about 100 megahertz. We have limited bandwidths because this particular spectrum, like I said, has those excellent properties of giving us coverage as well as capacity. So whereas some of the spectra available are dedicated for capacity deployment and others for coverage, you have one spectrum that can enable you to do both. So it's a miracle, isn't it, that somebody found this out. And today we are translating an important provision of the Act into reality by approaching NATCOMSAT in order to ensure that we optimally utilize a resource residing with them, which they have agreed, through arguments we have advanced, that indeed they can continue to provide the same services they are providing, and at the same time optimally use the spectrum for those services so that we can come in and use a portion of that spectrum.
Efforts by the federal government at enhancing power supply in the country dominated discussions at the 44th Virtual Executive Council meeting, presided over by President Buhari today, with Council approving all 6 memos presented for consideration by the Minister of Power, Maman Sali, amounting to nearly 3 billion naira. The approvals include the award of a contract for design, manufacturing and supply of critical spare parts for Crompton Greaves, procurement of 50 sets of battery banks and volt battery chargers for the substation used by the TCN, among others. The Power Minister notes that the procurements are geared towards upgrading the transmission system to the national grid for greater efficiency and ensuring sufficient power supply to the nation in no distant time. He emphasizes that Nigerians who receive less than 24 hours power supply will be charged lesser tariff than others. The Nigeria Labour Congress is unsettled by plans by the federal government to review workers' salaries, merge some agencies of government who are performing similar functions, and shut others in a bid to cut down the cost of governance. A statement signed by the NLC president, Mr. Iniubong, describes the move as unthinkable, as it insists that the government cannot unilaterally take some of these decisions, especially those affecting the salaries of workers. The NLC maintains that workers are currently unable to make a decent living with the current 30,000 naira minimum wage, which it says many states are yet to commence payment. The Labour movement advises the government to begin upward review of salaries for civil servants. And Senate President Ahmed Lawan has given the assurance that the National Assembly will ensure the safe return of Nigerian students currently stranded in the southern Caribbean nation hit by volcanic explosions. Senator Lawan gave the assurance in response to a request for intervention by the Consul General of the island nation of St. Vincent and Grenadines, Dr. Livy Odo, who paid him a courtesy call at the National Assembly today. He says he's saddened by the loss of lives and the situation of the Nigerian medical students who are now trapped on the island. St. Vincent and the Grenadines have been experiencing volcanic eruptions, which have caused serious damage on the island. And that's all from Abuja. Now to Anne for business news.
Thank you, Linda. The Federal Inland Revenue Service says it plans to recover taxes collected by defaulting companies, corporations, ministries, departments and agencies and other agents of collection directly from the bank accounts. And this is according to the Revenue Agency, is due to increasing cases of willful and illegal withholding of tax by defaulters. The statement by the FIRS stresses that a 30-day public notice has been issued in line with Section 31 of the Federal Inland Revenue Service Act 2007. It also explains that defaulters who fail to comply stand the risk of having all outstanding taxes deducted or have their assets seized and turned over to the federal government in lieu of the withheld taxes. Airtel Networks Limited has announced the appointment of Mr. Surendran as its Managing Director and Chief Executive Officer of its Nigeria subsidiary, replacing Mr. Olusegun Ogunsoya, who was recently announced as the Chief Executive Officer of Airtel Africa plc. A statement by the telecoms giant says that Mr. Surendran's appointment will take effect from August 1st, 2021. It also adds that new CEO will be appointed to the Executive Committee as Regional Operating Director and onto the board of Airtel Networks Nigeria. Airtel explains that Mr. Surendran will transition into his new role from June 1st this year and spend the time onboarding into the business till July 31st, 2021. And Nigeria's total pension assets fell by 51.3 billion naira to stand at 12.25 trillion naira in February 2021, and that's the lowest level in 4 months. According to the monthly pension report released by the Nigeria Pension Commission, the total pension assets declined by 0.42% from 12.29 trillion naira recorded in January this year. Analysts have attributed this decline in the pension assets to drop in prices of fixed securities, especially mutual funds. And in another negative trading day at the local markets, profit-taking as high-cap stocks posted for the loss from yesterday's session, and this was led by the banking stocks. Iniubong Mekwa has the details.
Hello and welcome to the Stock Market Report. Well, another bearish day as the all-share index dropped by almost 1% on the second trading day of the month. Sell pressure continued by a wider margin when compared to Tuesday's figures, as is largely evidenced in the oil and gas counter, which fell 2.29%. O&O drove this after shedding almost 2% off its share price. The banking sector also dropped by 1.69%, while industrial goods was the only gainer by 0.29%. And that's thanks to Lafarge Wabco, which made a 5.24 rebound, recovering some of the losses recorded on Tuesday. Now, on the activity chart, over 349 million units were traded in 4,554 deals valued at 3.5 billion naira. And this has left a negative market breadth with 16 gainers and 21 losers. That's the stock market report. I'm Ini John Mekwa.
Thank you, Ini. Well, let's see. In the United States, stocks closed stronger amid sell-off in tech components. A strong earnings results and economic optimism pushed the Dow Jones Industrial Average to a record high today. Let's take a look at the closing figures for today. With those numbers, we'll end Business News tonight. Thank you for watching. The rest of the news at 10 continues now with Ijoma. I'm Anne Nwawadu.
Thanks, Anne. Still ahead on the news at 10, Israel's political crisis persists as the country's president chooses Prime Minister Netanyahu's rival to form a new government within 28 days. Plus other international news from our studio in London. Please join us again. Welcome back. Israeli President Reuven Rivlin has chosen Yair Lapid, a centralist politician and Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's strongest rival, to try to form a new government, though his party's success is still uncertain. Simon Pusey has more international news in Around the World in 5.
Good evening and welcome to the Channel Studios here in London with your international news around the world in 5. Derek Chauvin, the former Minneapolis police officer convicted of murdering George Floyd, has asked a judge for a new trial.
Find the defendant guilty.
The legal team have filed court documents alleging misconduct by both prosecutors and jurors.
I cannot breathe.
Chauvin, who was captured on video kneeling on Mr. Floyd's neck for more than 9 minutes, was found guilty of murder and manslaughter. His lawyer says his client was deprived of a fair trial. The rare verdict against a police officer was considered a milestone in the racial history of the US and was widely applauded by Americans. Chauvin faces up to 40 years in prison. India has accounted for nearly half of the coronavirus cases reported worldwide last week and 1 in 4 of the deaths. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi is accused of stifling dissent and choosing politics over public health amid a deadly pandemic. He was also called a super spreader by the Vice President of the Indian Medical Association as he pressed ahead with a densely packed campaign rally. Meanwhile, as India's healthcare system is on the verge of collapse, doctors are forced to decide who will live and who will die when patients come to the hospitals gasping for breath. In the capital, fewer than 20 of more than 5,000 ICU beds are free at any one time. Patients are dying on the streets or at home. Crematoriums work round the clock, throwing up plumes of smoke as the bodies of victims arrive every few minutes. The entire Indian delegation in the UK for G7 talks has been asked to self-isolate after 2 of its members tested positive for COVID-19. India's foreign minister said he was made aware of exposure to possible COVID cases. He met in person on Monday with US Secretary of State Antony Blinken, but will now carry out all meetings virtually. India is not in the G7 group of nations, but delegates from the country were invited as guests. The talks this week are the first face-to-face meetings the G7 powers have had in more than 2 years. Several employees of a pharmaceutical company have been arrested in Indonesia for allegedly washing and reselling used COVID nasal swab test kits. Police said that up to 9,000 passengers at an airport in Medan may have been tested with the reused swab sticks. State-owned company Kimia Pharma is now reportedly facing a potential lawsuit launched on behalf of the travellers. It is believed the scam has been happening since last December at the Kuala Namu airport. Syrian air defences have brought down several Israeli missiles during pre-dawn raids on the Mediterranean port city of Latakia. The Syrian army said aerial strikes soon after 2 a.m. hit several areas along the southwest coast of the city. 1 civilian was killed and 6 injured in one of the strikes as it hit a civilian plastics factory in the city. Israel has escalated in recent months a so-called shadow war against Iranian-linked targets inside Syria. A court in Egypt has ruled that the Ever Given will continue to be held as a dispute over compensation shows no signs of being resolved. The massive container vessel that blocked the Suez Canal in March is currently impounded in a lake between 2 stretches of the canal. The Suez Canal Authority is seeking almost $1 billion in compensation from the Japanese owner of the vessel. An appeal by the owner for the vessel to be released has been rejected for now. And finally, an Israeli artist has found a new, bizarre painting technique for his work. Instead of using a brush, he uses the cannon of an old World War II tank. This former Israeli army sniper has turned his hand to action painting, but with live fire ranges as studios and guns instead of brushes to blast colours into abstract patterns. The artist shoots into bags of paint suspended between the muzzles and woodboard canvases. Amid the resulting splashes and holes, he intersperses letters in Hebrew, English and Russian. 20 of the unusual works have sold at between $5,000 and $10,000 apiece. And that's your international news around the world in 5. Now back to the Channel studios in Lagos.
Many thanks, Simon. In the UEFA Champions League, Chelsea have defeated Real Madrid to set up an All-English Champions League final against Manchester City in Istanbul on May the 29th. After a 1-1 draw in Spain, Timo Werner headed Chelsea ahead after Kai Havertz's chip rebounded off the crossbar. But Chelsea dominated the second half, and Mason Mount, the England international, scored late on from close range for a 3-1 aggregate win. The Premier League has confirmed that a limited number of supporters will be permitted to return to stadiums for the final 2 rounds of games this season. Game 37 is due to be played on May the 18th and the 19th, with the final fixtures to be played on May the 23rd. Under the UK government's roadmap, crowds of up to 10,000 or 25% of the capacity will be permitted from May the 17th. Manchester United will have to play 3 Premier League matches in 5 days after their postponed clash with Liverpool was rearranged for May the 13th. Man United were due to host bitter rivals Liverpool on Sunday, but the game was postponed after hundreds of fans broke into Old Trafford in protest at the club's owners. The South Africa Football Association SAFA has appointed Belgian Hugo Broos as the new coach of the country's national team. Broos has signed a 5-year contract with South Africa and will replace Molefi Nseki, who was sacked after the Bafana failed to qualify for next year's Africa Cup of Nations in Cameroon. The 69-year-old is expected to resume work next week. And the Confederation of African Football has set into action the push for a $1 billion lifeline for a revamp of football infrastructure on the continent. CAF President Patrice Motsepe and FIFA President Gianni Infantino, as part of their first joint mission in Africa, visited Côte d'Ivoire with a focus on developing and strengthening the country's football governance. And that's sports news. I'm Ayotunde Balogun's back to you, John.
Thanks, Ayotunde. And the main news again. The 29 students abducted from the College of Forestry and Mechanization in Kaduna State were released today after spending 57 days in bandits' captivity. Also today, former President Olusegun Obasanjo advocated the carrot and stick approach to the fight against insecurity in the country. Chief Obasanjo said the division of the country is not an option. And Israel's political crisis continued today as the country's president chose Prime Minister Netanyahu's rival to form a new government within 28 days. That's the news at 10 tonight. Thanks a lot for staying with us. I'm Ijoma Onyato. Do you have a good night?